Action.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the September 19th, 2024 work session of the Croton Harmon School Board of Education. Thank you. I would like to call tonight's meeting to order. Action item 1, that's action item 1.1, call the meeting to order. Do I have?
No,
We don't need to. Okay, so 1.2, approval of the agenda. I know, I'm getting there. Recommended action, resolve that the Board of Education hereby approves the agenda.
so moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Action item 2.1, proposed. What, on the question?
Yeah, it's
Okay, all right.
next time.
Next time. Item 2.1, proposed NISBA resolutions.
It's just a discussion. item.
It's just a discussion item, so we don't have to actually, so I believe this will go to,
Turn it over to you.
turn it over to Theo.
Thanks, Anna. So we met as the advocacy committee earlier this week, and I think. When did we turn this on? Yes, right? We met to review all of the 2024 proposed resolutions, which are linked in the agenda as well as, and I know the board had gotten notice of it several weeks earlier. So this is the 2024 NISBA proposed resolutions. We are recommending that the board approve. There's two sections in the proposed resolutions. The first section, which has 25 resolutions, entitled Proposed Resolutions Recommended by the Resolutions Committee for Adoption. And resolutions 26 through 37, which are proposed resolutions not recommended by the Resolutions Committee for Adoption. And what we, as the advocacy committee, are putting forth for consideration by the board is to, after review, that we support all 2024 NISBA proposed resolutions recommended for adoption, except for resolution 15. So all but one, so there are 25 to support all of them except proposed resolution 15. And in addition, the proposed resolution number 37 under proposed resolutions not recommended by the Resolution Committee for Adoption, that if that one is put forward again by the NISBA committee for reconsideration, that we vote to support it.
I'm sorry, which number?
37.
30s.
So any questions or discussion about any of that?
I mean, if you don't mind just giving us some of the rationale or discussion or why you arrived at, you know, no to 15 and yes to 37.
Sure, and just give me a second to.
If I have 15 pulled up, if you'd like me to read it right now.
Oh, sure, yeah, I'm just scrolling down.
Proposed resolution 15 is resolved that the New York State School Boards Association shall advocate for the NY Swims initiative to be extended and expanded to include additional, enhanced, and targeted state funding specifically dedicated to constructing pools in K-12 schools and for increased aid for operating, maintenance, and staffing costs associated with these facilities. This enhanced funding should be built into the building aid formulas to promote equitable and year-round access to swimming instruction for all students.
And I mean, I can give a summary of our overall consensus in the committee, which is that while we support efforts that go towards teaching young people how to swim. We thought that, given that there really is one pot of money, right, for our schools, that the substantial cost of trying to get pools into many or all facilities across the state would take a lot of funds away from, other areas of education. And we also noted that there are, in many communities, programs that do have pools, do provide swimming instruction. So we know that that's not true of all communities, of course, but we thought that on balance, the fact that the fact that it's all one pot of money, that so many funds could go to the creation of this program and away from all of the other things that we have to pay for, we thought it was worthy of opposing this measure. So that's 15.
That makes sense.
And then 37 is,
Can we have some discussion on some of the other items that were recommended, just for like some clarification, perhaps from administration on a couple of, and also just a sense of the board as a whole?
If you don't mind, can we get through 37 first, because I want to understand their recommendations, and then we can go back.
Okay, I didn't know what you wanted to do.
Yeah,
The
no.
first half, the second, that's fine.
Yeah.
okay, so just to wrap up quickly, so proposed resolution 37, which again was not put forward for recommendation, but if put forward for reconsideration, we would recommend a vote in favor. This proposed resolution is 37, resolved that the New York State School Board Association advocates for 30 to 40 minutes per day of recess time being officially recognized as an alternative form of instructional time in elementary schools and counted towards mandated minutes. Schools then can allocate adequate time for recess each day to ensure the social and emotional well-being and the whole child development of their students. And the conversation, please fill in if I don't describe it entirely, that was that we do value, the physical activity and kind of the social aspects of recess time, and we believe that it should be valued in the way described as in this resolution. Do you want to, Anamika or Sarah, add anything?
Sarah.
I think we also note that this resolution, it would not mandate necessarily, it wouldn't be mandating recess time, but it would be providing schools that do feel that that is an important thing. And I think we recognize the importance of unstructured play for young people. It would provide that as an option to be counted towards mandated minutes. I think where the resolutions committee, why they ultimately decided not to recommend this resolution for approval was that there are, right, so many academic demands and mandates that are based on our schools by SUD, and that there is a limited amount of time to meet those needs. And so they didn't want schools to take away academic instruction time if they felt like that was something they would have to do in order to fit in more recess time. Whereas the way that I've read this resolution, it really was just providing more flexibility rather than mandating.
Would it have an impact on collective bargaining and the amount of instructional time? Would each are required to provide?
I haven't seen the actual resolution, but I would think certainly if we're talking about the impact of making recess instructional time on potential phys ed staffing, I would imagine that there would be collective bargaining implications locally and nice.
Yeah, I think I'd want more information on that because it could be an unintended consequence, not that, it would want. Just to have all the information before making a recommendation, one way or the other.
Let me look for the end of the meeting, because this is where we were trying to reach, I think, a consensus on what the full board is comfortable with,
Mhm.
with me going into the meeting, which will be on October 10th, so we won't be meeting again prior to that.
Okay.
But just noting that this would have to actually, like, it would, there are some barriers that it would have to pass before it even came up for a vote, so.
Correct. So
That's a factor.
resolutions that are not recommended by the resolutions committee do need to be introduced again at the annual meeting, to be brought forth for a vote. They wouldn't automatically be brought forth for a vote, whereas those first 25 will. And so a school would need to bring it forward for a vote and for there to be some discussion and deliberation there.
The way the resolution is written, there is no reference to any needed staffing to have recess for academic minutes.
No.
As it stands right now, recess can stand for academic minutes if the PE teacher is present at recess. So that would be a standing practice right now. So I think this is taking that requirement away.
So it would
Hmm,
provide
thank
them
you,
for more
yeah.
flexibility.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you for
So
that.
in our, at CET is a certified
No. So therefore recess minutes are not counted.
recess, at present, our recess minutes are not counted because we don't have a certified PE teacher that is supervising it.
There was a PVC, right? Still is, yes. So those minutes do count at PVC.
And so this resolution would give the option to count them, but not necessarily require those to be counted. Right, so there's like no flexibility. Correct. Any other
Anything
discussion
else
on
on
that?
those two items? So Neil,
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. First goes to resolution number 4, which reads, resolved that the New York State School Board Association work with the New York State Educational Conference Board and its supportive members to call on the state legislature to improve Tier 6 in the current retirement system for school employees, and that we seek support and legislation to establish tier equity for tiers 5 and 6 to be more aligned with tiers 1 through 4. And I will say, starting off, that I, as the representative to Legislative Action Committee from BOCES, attended the meeting, so I heard the discussion, and there was, I guess I would say, considerable discussion about the effects of this resolution. And it's written a little bit, how can I put it, a little bit imprecise, because it says we seek legislation to establish tier equity for 5 and 6 to be more aligned with 1 through 4, but tiers 1 through 4 are not precisely the same. The rationale talks about the fact that the retirement benefits that a teacher, if we're talking about ERS, we also have employees who are ERS, but this talks about teachers only, or teachers and administrators. There's a substantial difference in retirement benefits for those teachers coming into our system now. Both in terms of how long they have to work until they're eligible for retirement and what their retirement benefit would be. Obviously, an increase in the provisions in tier 5 and 6 is going to raise costs, right? Because actuarially, even though we talked about this, so I raised this and we talked about it, even though teachers who are now in tier 1, 2, 3, and 4 will get close to retirement, and may, those who are retired will basically pass away, or their spouses will pass away, and then that draw on the pension system, on the retirement system, will abate. But there's a balance here between making teaching a more making it more attractive to become a teacher because of those retirement benefits and the costs that we have. And I did not see, and as we talked about it, Legislative Action Committee, there's really not been an actuarial analysis, if it can even be done, to see what the effect would be over, over the years and decades to establish tier equity for tiers 5 and 6. Our district, I think, is fortunate that we are able to attract new faculty who are willing to come and work even without considering those disparities, and that may not be the case for other districts and other parts of the state. So I'm just kind of uncertain about all of the ramifications of this resolution. I think in the end, maybe not so much for our district, but perhaps for other districts where this is more of a concern, I would support it, but I wanted to raise it to everybody to, get people's thoughts before we come to a conclusion.
Your points that we're recommending resolution that if enacted or passed, we don't have enough information to quantify the impact,
Correct.
right?
But
Making a decision.
I think also the way that this resolution is written, to Neil's point, it was written in somewhat of an imprecise manner. There isn't necessarily a sense that it really is just, it basically gives NISBA then the opportunity to go out and advocate on behalf of looking at ways to bring 5 and 6 a little bit closer. And I think that, as we are likely all aware, right, that has been something that has been forefront for the teachers union at the state level, and something that they've really worked for and have seen some momentum. And so I think that this is also while we recognize that there would be some financial consequences, there isn't a specific plan here. It's really just allowing people to, I think, go out and begin to have that conversation.
Which is a necessary conversation.
Yeah, I think it is, although the resolution is somewhat, as I said, inconsistent, because it first says tier equity, and then it says get closer to 1 to 4. Tier equity means make it the same as 1 to 4. And so, but in the end, I am probably I would not object to this resolution, but I think it's important that we understand, the ramifications and any imposition. One of the things that I've noted is that when somebody puts in a resolution, it's rarely gets rewritten or rewritten extensively if it's not clear. So, we're giving guidance to NISBA's legislative government. So we need to know what guidance we're giving, but that's.
In an ideal world, this would be the last line would be reworded to say legislation to adjust tiers 5 and 6 to be more aligned with tiers 1 through 4. And I would say, sort of my instruction or request to the, amendments are solicited from the floor.
No,
No.
Not anymore.
that's all changed. Amendments must be submitted a week in advance
Okay.
because
I
they
don't
didn't
think
want
it's
to have
worth
all that.
submitting an amendment. If they were accepted from the floor, I would say yes, but no, not worth it. Ideally, it would be amended, but I don't feel that strongly about it. I think this is fine and that it could potentially, if adopted, spur some action
Absolutely,
to at least research this topic.
absolutely.
That's going to get some staffers up in state thinking about it.
I agree.
I have one other that I want to raise, and that's resolution number 12, which reads, Resolved that the New York State School Board Association support funding for technology and related expenses for smartphone regulation policies, whether pursued by districts voluntarily or mandated by the state. And what that to me says that if the governor's proposal that smartphones basically not be permitted in schools, some schools, all schools, or a district adopts such a policy, that the state provide funding so that those policies can be implemented. That really raises two questions to me. First is, we know that, that's that's already well in, down the road to see if it's going to happen. But I guess my question is, and we've talked about this over the years with regard to other resolutions, with a limited pot of money, that comes in terms of state aid. Every time we deal with categorical type programs, we're lessening the amount that may be available for expenses, costs that relate more directly to the provision of instructional services. So I'm a little reticent about saying, oh, make sure there's a pot of money for this. And I just raise that for people's consideration.
I worry about the same thing, but I worry about it in a different way. A lot of times when people start talking about bans on cell phones in certain situations, they start talking about blocking devices. And the fact of the matter is there are no blocking devices like that which meet regulatory muster.
So that would be the
It's highly
technology.
unlikely
Right.
that a technology to block the use of cell phones inside of school buildings would be approved by the FCC. The only places where that's approved right now is in prisons, as far as I know.
Most of the current technology are locking devices.
Right.
Yeah.
There's locking,
Lockers and things like that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Bands that,
And, I kind of worry about something that's prescriptive. I'd much rather have that money in, as Neil says, in the general fund than split off into a dedicated fund that can only be used for this purpose, because it's going to lock us down to some other person, some other, probably SED's idea of how to spend that money that's very narrow. And I'd much rather we have the ability to dictate it ourselves in a way that is more flexible. We can find our appropriate way to do it.
But in the absence of a policy like this, any kind of regulation or policy then becomes an unfunded mandate.
Yeah,
So to have
well,
this enacted, which at least allows for related expenses if a regulation or policy does come down the line, is almost an insurance policy for our district in terms of having funding to be able to cope or handle anything like that.
I think it'd be okay if it said additional money
Well, once
instead of
again,
just saying support funding.
With
But it also doesn't
technology,
specify the funding that would what that funding stream would be. It doesn't say like that would be like a dedicated, right? Like I don't necessarily envision it would come down sort of like UPK funds come down, like that's a dedicated like pool of money.
but I think it is very specific. It says support funding for technology and related expenses for smartphone regulation policies. So, there's been a lot of talk recently. Governor Hochul certainly did that in the spring of testing the waters regarding policy to regulate smartphones in schools. If something were to come down, this would allow for funding regarding whatever mandate or policy was then imposed on or required of our school district.
however, it also says whether pursued by districts voluntarily or mandated by the state.
Mhm.
So it would mean,
Even more of an insurance policy, because if we decide to pursue something as a school district, this would allow funding for that.
yeah, but then, you know, I mean, that's fine.
I just don't see the downside, but tell me, what is it?
No, the only downside, as I said before, is with a limited pool of funding, because where's the funding gonna come from? It's gonna have to be in a budget which is enacted by the legislature next year, if that's how you get funded.
Which would be a
Or by
further
grant.
consideration for the legislature then, if to say, you know, if we enact this, then we also have to not make it an unfunded mandate.
Yeah, but if we're talking about the risks, right, the risk is that it passes and then they take it away from another funding source, you know, another. funding
Yeah, in other
source.
words, the state, when we see our state aid run, there'll be another
Yeah.
column that says, money you get for this, and then they will reduce the money you get for textbooks or.
That's right.
But if
Whatever.
it passes, we're gonna have to spend money to make sure that we comply with it anyway,
Well,
right?
then that's the other risk, right, that they impose a solution that doesn't necessarily work. For our district. Or the way we're thinking about it is very different from the way it's spelled out. By city. So those are two risks, I think. We want to consider.
I mean, I can.
I mean,
Well, I
I
think
can
got
align.
more thoughts on it, or do we wanna do a?
Thumbs up,
thumbs down,
thumbs
so that we could-
You know,
I would like some guidance for the town, so.
I think
Let's just do a thumbs up, thumbs down. So all in favor of this resolution?
No.
There's it's thumbs up or thumbs down. There's no like side.
No,
by
no,
side.
no, no.
Either way.
Who's abstaining?
abstaining.
I'm
Alright, so
abstaining.
either way, there's.
I'm
there's-
abstaining.
there
I
it
think
is.
You could oppose it, yeah.
Yeah.
Passes.
Thumbs down. Abstain.
But it's fine.
Okay,
Okay,
anything else, Neil, about a question?
no, those are the two that I thought of at the moment. I want to run through it one more time, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm curious, I read through this and I didn't see any resolution around the 4% cap on carrying over the fund balance.
Because that is already a current position of NISBA,
It's been a
and
standing
positions, it is a standing position and positions are enacted for a 5-year period. So if you see at the beginning of the proposed resolutions book, there are 3 that were sunsetting, so those were current resolutions that the 5 years was coming to a close. The 4%
It's still in there.
is still,
When is
it's
that
still an active
Is it up?
position. Yes, it's an active position in this that you can see up on their website. And I believe it doesn't sunset for like another couple of years, or 2 more years.
Anyone else? Do you feel comfortable?
I do, if everyone is comfortable with our recommendations, then
Yeah.
yeah. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on to item, we'll just go back to our agenda. Moving on to new business item 2.2. Recommended action, be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby resolves the opt-in agreement between Croton Harmon Union Free School District and the County of Westchester and Bus Patrol America LLC to participate in the Westchester County School Bus Stop Arm Safety Program.
So.
Second,
On the question,
So, I'm strongly in support of this. I drive away from my house and toward the village most mornings along Mount Airy, and it is shocking the number of times that I have seen cars pass stopped school buses. Absolutely shocking. And it's important that we do something about this. This program, while experimental, seems like it may be a way to enhance the enforcement of the laws that are already on the books with respect to cars not passing stop school buses, they're stopped to pick up our kids and drop off our kids. And, I hope we get it going. And, as quickly as possible, and frankly, that we start ticketing people aggressively. That this aids,
To be clear, we don't ticket anyone.
I understand, we do not.
I'm
Just-
just,
just to be
I'm
clear.
gonna speak to that, I'm gonna speak to that.
To that penalties are imposed by the powers that are empowered to do so.
Thank you.
To address this problem.
So where are we on that? That's the thing, the part that we don't fully know about, right?
Should be mid-November installation.
And no, not in terms of the installation, in terms of the piece of it that relates to whether it's the county or the municipality that actually has authority to issue tickets. Isn't that one of the things that's been sort of?
So
holding
it's
us
a
up?
private agreement, I'll let
Yeah.
you. No, go ahead.
Please, yeah.
As my understanding of it, and I think this has shifted a couple times.
Right.
We're talking about a position called the county enforcement technician.
Right,
I don't know that that person's been identified by the county. It certainly hasn't been identified to us yet, but my understanding is it's a county function.
And the fines collected go not through our local court, they go through the county.
right.
So it's much more, like the red light cameras that happen in the city. So to contest a ticket like that, you would also not go to our local court, you would contest it directly to that particular agency.
So the agreement is between the county of Westchester and us and Bus Patrol. And so it is obligating them now to participate. This is part of what the holdup has been, as it seemed to me. I mean, again, this has shifted so many times, but I think part of the holdup was that the county wasn't necessarily in a
Correct.
position to move on this.
Correct.
And that's one of the reasons why, although within our district, we've been talking about this is coming soon, this is coming soon. This is a big accomplishment to have gotten to this point where now we actually have like a date and we have like a time frame for installation. Because as Josh said, people in the community, they'll see this on a daily basis.
Yes.
And it's not just on that area, unfortunately, it's all over Croton.
Yeah.
Buses are being passed.
To provide a little bit of context, this is not unique, the timing,
Yeah,
what
yeah.
is happening here is not unique to Croton. It's the same thing is happening in Terrytown and Sleepy
Right.
Hollow, and as far as I know, the town of Greenberg.
Mhm.
I just know from like a professional standpoint, everybody has been considering the impact of what these tickets will do to local communities and to police enforcement agencies, which will actually not have anything to do with this.
Right.
Also, to be clear. And my understanding is that we're all on the same timeline. All of Westchester County is on the same timeline. So there is no delay
No,
here.
no, no. The issue is that the pilot program actually had started in other districts within Westchester as part of a pilot with no enforcement.
Right.
But even like the idea of a camera, knowing that they exist, even if you don't necessarily get a ticket,
Yeah, it could
was
be.
sort of like a deterrent for people psychologically.
Sure.
So I think it's great that it's catching up to, to those pilot programs for us here.
Yeah.
Because it is something we've been advocating for, I think, for some time.
Yeah, no, great.
And I should point out, this is not a problem only in Croton.
No,
I see it in Portland, and I see it in Yorktown, and I see it in Austin.
I want to add just one other thing, which is really maybe an advocacy issue down the road. In court decisions in Long Island and Maine, there were challenges, successful challenges to a stop arm camera ticket on the basis that there was not a proof that that car was going through, going past the red light or the signals. In May, there was a change to the vehicle and traffic law to try to address that situation, which got very little publicity. It took me a long time to even find where it is. And even after that, if I'm not mistaken, there are some courts upstate who have refused to assess fines for somebody going past the red signal on the buses. And when the photos have been taken through stop arm cameras.
Which is a political issue, because basically they're saying, why should you use our courts to enforce something by which we will not reap any benefit? Like the municipality doesn't reap any benefit.
Right,
But I don't think that's happening in Westchester County.
yeah, I just want I'm just saying that whether it's advocacy within Westchester or advocacy at the state level to ensure that this program is as effective as possible. Including the position
It
of.
would be more advocacy on the county level, because
Okay,
this is a
fine.
county agreement. This is an agreement between this company and the county of Westchester
Okay,
in
so
all of the municipalities.
whoever it is, I wanna make sure that, people aren't gonna get off. They basically blow past the stop school bus and then use clever lawyering to to evade responsibility. That's my picture.
One thing to note here is that it looks like all the costs of this are covered by the county. Right, and I'm also just, I mean, this is a very logistical thing, but.
I mean,
these
all
would
of
be
the
in-
monies collected go to the county too, so.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, but I think good to note that it's not the district that's paying for
Correct.
the installation and repair and monitoring, et cetera. I assume these just get like replenished throughout, like if we get new buses, they will get put onto those new buses right away, that kind of thing, so. But yeah, I'm also in full support of it.
Mhm.
So, all in favor,
I,
opposed, abstain, motion carries. Moving on to our consent agenda, item 3.1. Be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby approves all items on the consent agenda.
So
so,
On the question,
Can you give it a chance? I'm fine.
all in favor,
I,
opposed, abstain, motion carries. Moving on to our work session portion of our meeting, we will now hear the presentation of the district on school level visioning and goals, and I will turn it over to Superintendent Walker.
Anna, thank you. I want to begin just by thanking our administrative team sincerely for being here tonight. We understand what an incredibly busy time of year it is to open school, back to school nights and everything that's associated with that. So thank you for giving of your time to this team this evening. And beyond that, thank you for giving of your vision and your talent to the creation and the implementation of this work. And hopefully I can speak on behalf of the team in saying this continues to be the most impactful and influential work that I know I've ever been a part of as an educational professional. And I'm very confident in saying the community and the board will be very pleased and I believe inspired by what they're going to hear from the team tonight. Great. So when I think we all know when the vision map was first introduced, one of the challenges that we knew went along with a document with an idea that there was this wide ranging and this ambitious was how to focus this work. And in doing so, provide hopefully for some cohesiveness in how we were approaching the idea of what school can be, not as three great individual schools, but as one inspiring and amazing school district. And so as we did last year, this team, the administrative team, spent time this summer at our retreats, including with some of our teacher leaders from across the system, reflecting on the work of last year and thinking about our best next steps going forward. And you will see on this slide where we've determined our areas of focus to be across each school for this year. So we're certainly cognizant of the need to make sure that our faculty and our community doesn't experience that kind of whiplash that is part of the annual cycle of so many school districts where each September seems to bring about a new direction in the system or in the district. And part of our thinking about how to address that, as we did through the budget process this past year, is to talk about the vision for the future, not in 1 year increments, but in multi-year plans. And so what you'll see tonight reflects the team's best thinking about where we want to be in these areas 3 years from now, as well as goals and actions related to the 24-25 school year designed to get us toward that place. Of course, this doesn't reflect in any way all of the work that this team or that the district will be doing. But we hope that it serves to provide a sense for the board and for the community about how we're moving forward together cohesively into the future in these inspiring areas of the vision map. And so in looking at the first area of the vision map for this year, class design, you'll see on this slide the 3-year vision and current year goal for this work from the district's perspective. And as you look at the language, you'll hopefully note the effort to continue to advance that concept of cohesiveness, that we have goals and practices that serve as hopefully the ties that bind in terms of being able to see similarity in the work that occurs across all 3 of our schools. And as we think about the potential of interdisciplinary classes for students in all of our schools, we need to make sure, of course, that we have a plan for that evolution budgetarily, from a human resources perspective and a pedagogical perspective. We have an unbelievable opportunity through this kind of thinking to make some decisions and shift how we want teaching and learning to look in these kinds of environments. And so we want to make sure we're planful across the system and bringing together teachers who are in that model now and will be to learn from each other and to continue to look both in the system and outside of the system for inspiration and best practices to help drive those conversations going forward. And you'll see that in the goal language there, the goal is that by this time next year, these courses, these learning experiences exist in all 3 of our buildings, impacting a significantly greater number of our students.
I'll be discussing master scheduling and the calendar. So over the next 3 years, our vision and work will focus on ensuring each school's master schedule includes opportunities for interdisciplinary, cross-grade interaction, and passion-based experiences. The specific goal for this year is that Central Admin will collaborate with each school's administrative team to develop and refine the master schedules to support the district's long-term vision. The district office administration will support opportunities to build cohesion across the schools and allow for access for these common experiences for all students. The actions we will take will be to create, lead, and develop. We'll be creating opportunities for building and cross-building meetings. We will be taking the lead in the role of development of these interdisciplinary and intercession plans and activities. Develop a plan to communicate the master scheduling work to the community and stakeholders. Secondly, increasing student interaction among grade levels. Our vision is that all students will learn elbow to elbow with students from different grades on an ongoing basis. The goal is to continue to expand those cross-grade models and see examples of these models in each building and school. And the actions we will take are identifying models in neighboring school districts and creating those opportunities for staff and admin to go visit those other school districts. And maybe take something away that we could bring here and build our programs around as well. We will continue to support the logistics to allow for those intervisitation of staff and administrators, and ensuring that the focus of our instructional coaches continue to impact the instructional practices for all students and provide those opportunities for collaboration.
And as a district, our 3rd goal is to figure out the best way to grade and assess our students. In 3 years, ultimately, what we would like to have is to have built a shared understanding of the importance of assessment, how it's done right, to agree on how to best provide students with constructive feedback so that they can learn and grow, and ultimately have an assessment system that caters to the needs of all of our students from kindergarten through 12th grade. To launch this effort this year, our administrative team is going to read from the best educational thinkers on this topic. We're going to examine the best practices of leading schools worldwide. And through ongoing discussion, start considering new assessment and feedback models inspired by these best practices. We'll also plan to talk to colleges, understand their expectations for student achievement, and confirm that the approaches we consider will prepare our students for future success. And of course, through all of this, we recognize the importance of collaborative input. We want to hear from our community, particularly our parents and our alumni, and understand their thoughts and gather their input throughout this process. And now we'll move from district goals to our building goals and start with our high school.
Can I ask, would it be helpful if there are any questions on any of that, or do you want to put it in? Are
We could stop and address at each level, sure.
there any questions? I mean, I have questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
So just with respect to page 3, under the. I'm sorry, my computer doesn't cooperate with me. The class design, there's reference to a curriculum leadership group. Who would you expand on that?
We
Like you said?
envision that to be administration and teacher leaders, right? Particularly those who are currently engaged in interdisciplinary coursework themselves, and those that are being identified by our building administrators as those who are planning to be in it in the future, and have that group probably along with our pedagogical coaches, bring them together on a regular basis to engage in discussion of best practices and help to shape the curriculum.
Okay. And then on page 4. With respect to the interdisciplinary class offerings, like the model of how classes are taught at CET and PVC is, you know, very much interdisciplinary just because of the level of education. So is that going to change, or are we talking about just the high school?
We're not talking about just high school.
Okay.
What we're talking about is, and you'll hear more from Carrie and Craig and Michael and Nicole, but even within those structures, what we're looking at is how do we blend together different subject areas with teachers who have different areas of expertise, planning together, implementing together, assessing together, and reflecting together. And so when we say interdisciplinary, it's not just in the content, it's also in the idea that you have multiple faculty members collaborating together.
Okay.
And there are examples of that occurring now across the system.
Mhm.
It's about how do you go from pockets of things to a broader systemic approach.
And then I love to hear with regard to a shared understanding of assessment that you want to hear from the community. Have you gotten to the point where you have kind of like brainstorm what that looks like, or are you not there yet?
We're not doing that.
Yeah. But it's a component that you're considering. Which is
Yeah.
great to hear, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, really the first step, and I know John described this, is we want to make sure that as an administrative team, as a leadership team, there's a shared philosophy around what our core beliefs are around this. It's an incredibly nuanced topic that doesn't get talked about a lot, even in collegiate level courses. So it's an opportunity for us to do some learning together,
Mhm.
and to have some good deep conversations. It's already been, obviously been happening for some time, it's continuing in earnest throughout the whole year.
But you're talking about hearing from the community with respect to all of that.
Yes, oh yeah, absolutely.
All right, thank you.
On the same slide, I kind of wonder, how do we, there has been a significant shift in university admissions procedures recently because of the recent rulings in the Supreme Court. And that's still thinking out the impact of that and how colleges, universities, and professional schools manage admission is still in flux. And I sort of wonder if you have do you have any thoughts on how we time this relative to that moving target? Do we know where we're headed? Is really my question. Do you know that is our fundamental boundary condition at the end of grade 12 for many of our students?
Well, aside from the Supreme Court issue, of course, secondary. Higher education is moving, different institutions are moving different. But what we are hearing is the overall trend is aligned with the desire to de-emphasize traditional assessment models and really think about how we are reporting holistically the individual nature and strengths of the child apart from letter grades. So that's what we're hearing from universities, is that is the movement, is to think about the overall attributes and strengths of a human child. And how we depict that in the transcript is something that we think is aligned with what universities are doing.
Can I expand on that question a little bit? Sure. I think you answered part of it, I just wanna make sure, it's clear. So how disciplinary courses, I guess, viewed by post-secondary institution? Are they viewing them in a favorable light?
We know that the design of university courses are leaning
Yeah.
towards offering interdisciplinary. So I think our movement to create interdisciplinary courses is aligned with their putting an increasing value in offering them themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, just a comment, because what I've been reading is that there's been a return by higher education to test scores, to a reliance on test scores. And I'm wondering, how do we respond to that? At the same time, recognize that isn't, I think there's an experiment that happened over the last few years, and I think that people should be back.
Yeah, I think more.
So in terms of standardized test scores in the admissions process, our students have been still taking SATs and ACTs all along. Obviously with individual consideration and conversations with their counselors. So the standardized admissions testing conversation, I think, is different than conversations around interdisciplinary courses and portfolio-based assessments and the kind of grading and assessment that we're talking about. We're not talking about recommending for our kids to take and prepare for the SATs and ACTs, because we know that that's something that they need for their college admissions process. So there's sort of two different types of assessment, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying.
Just to follow up on that, with respect to like the development of these interdisciplinary courses and them sometimes replacing, right, like traditional AP courses. Can you just expand on that? Like, I know that there's been confusion in the community regarding some of our classes now being SUNY classes and not being AP, but students also still being able to sit for the AP separate and aside from that.
So we have most of our dual enrollment classes, which are typically dual enrollment with SUNY, are co-seated as AP classes. So on a transcript, it will appear like SUNY/AP, whatever. In those courses, students can earn college credit if they elect to go that route, and they can also sit for the AP exam. So particularly for our students who are juniors and may not know what their college plans are yet, most of the time they're sitting for both, getting the college credit and taking the AP exam. So that's the majority of our courses. Interdisciplinary courses, so we don't have any interdisciplinary courses right now that are dual enrollment, although that's certainly a possibility in the future. But the interdisciplinary courses don't replace the options for the AP or the dual enrollment courses. There's sort of another offering out there, but they haven't replaced any of those courses. So for example, you can choose to take bioethics in 11th or 12th grade, but you can also choose to take AP literature or AP bio too. So we have eliminated any of those classes. The only exception right now is US history is a SUNY course, but students can still take the AP exam if they elect to.
and the materials taught in that course align with the materials they would be required to know for the AP exam.
So in particular for the US history, they'll be able to sit for the AP exam, but it's not like a test prep course. The SUNY curriculum goes into a lot more depth in particular areas as opposed to a survey course, which is more the style of an AP course. So we have a really phenomenal team of US history teachers who carefully evaluated the content of the course to make that decision in order to move forward, because a lot of the courses align so well between the SUNY and the AP that we can offer them simultaneously, but the content of the US history is much more in depth. so we weren't able to co-seat it.
So it'd be sufficient for them to sit for the AP.
And they, where they're signing up now for the AP exams, and we anticipate that the majority of them will still sit for the AP exam because they're juniors.
Thank you.
I have just one follow-up question that's sort of, I don't know if it really connects to the question that Omar raised, but I'll sort of articulate it based off of the slide. So I think Omar, your point was, it's like, depending on what research you read and where you're reading, you sometimes get different information. So it's great to see here that that we're talking about sort of developing or furthering our grading and assessment systems based off of research. And that'll be part of the discussion, of course, that you have to, of course, it's research-based. I think that's sort of understood. I think one thing that I would ask on behalf of the board is that we also get like a sense of that research as we're going through it. Obviously, there's time, it's gonna take time to sort of determine how to involve the community and get feedback, but I think as we're going through this process, because we are talking about like sort of changing the way that we're doing things, I think it's helpful, whether it's through work sessions, like periodically over the course of this sort of rolling out, or again, in terms of our own development as a board, we've talked about this as we identify sort of like what our goals as a board are going to be simultaneously with the district. I think sort of like an exchange of information would allow us as a board to also sort of be able to support this process in a way where we're coming to it with the same background information and education as all of you as you're talking about it. So put that out there.
Yeah, so we'd be happy to share some of the resources that we have been and we'll be taking a look at. Natural transition, I think, perhaps to high school. Thanks.
So under the umbrella of class design for the high school, we have 3 subcategories that are continued parts of our 3-year vision and this year's goals at CHUFSD. Many of which we're very excited are now being implemented for the first time. So that includes our interdisciplinary team taught classes, academic concentration, and dual enrollment classes. And you'll see that the language there sort of overlaps all of those areas because those are part of what allows the class design to happen. So we currently have 4 interdisciplinary classes running at CHHS this year, with approximately 60% of our 9th graders enrolled in at least one of those courses. Each of the courses are designed so that the students are earning either their core English, math, social studies, or science credit through those classes. And the teachers have designed every aspect of the curriculum based on passions and interests that then they carefully shape to meet the standards for their content areas. In addition to designing their curriculum, each course is also employing innovative grading and assessment practices, whether it be portfolio-based assessment or mastery-based grading. The kind of work that the teachers in these courses are doing in assessment, we're going to talk more about later in the grading and assessment category. But that will be beneficial, not just for our district's vision map, but also will position us to be ahead of the game when the Blue Ribbon Commission graduation measures are finalized, which we anticipate are going to be coming out this November. So hopefully we'll have very good information soon. Then simultaneously to implementing our 4 interdisciplinary courses, we are already planning for a number of additional potential courses for the following year, including things like conservation, civics, social justice and health, graphic novels, visual storytelling, and expanding our 9th grade connections course to all of our 9th graders. To support all of this, other actions on our list include aligning budget planning and staffing requests to support the growth of classes over time. So we're trying to be very thoughtful over 3 years where we need additional staffing, where we can be creative with staffing to support this growth. And then in addition, we're continuing to grow our dual enrollment options with the intention of exposing students to the best curriculum and options for earning college credit, which I mentioned briefly before. And we currently have 9 dual enrollment courses and are continuing to explore opportunities to pair more dual enrollment options with AP classes to offer, and even to offer dual enrollment options for courses that are not currently AP courses. So for example, we have our first dual enrollment pre-calculus course this year. So pre-calculus is not an AP course, but now our students who are taking pre-calculus can have the option to earn college credit through that. So in this section, you'll also see some bullets about how we plan to support these classes through the revision of our master schedule that Mark will talk about shortly as well. But before we get to that, I'm going to pass it to Erica to talk about academic concentration.
Thank you. So as you probably know, the New York State Blue Ribbon Commission recommended going to one type of diploma with the option to add seals and endorsements. And their purpose in doing that is to reflect rigorous standards while also allowing students to demonstrate their unique interests and passions. And prior to this, we were already working on the implementation of and the planning of academic concentration. So we were ahead of that before they even came out with their recommendation. And at the time, we were thinking about just a designation on their transcript, but we're very excited now with the possibility of being able to offer a seal in the near future. So I just wanted to remind everyone about what concentrations are. They're offered through grades 9 through 12. It's a comprehensive curriculum. And the purpose is to challenge students to pursue their passions, to think critically, to collaborate effectively, and to innovate across disciplines. And that's in the broader area of humanities, civics, or STEM to begin. So some of those components are a selection of courses. Some of them are required. Some of them are elective. And the idea is to foster both specialization, but then also interdisciplinary thinking to see how they connect across disciplines and in the outside world outside of the classroom. They include at least one interdisciplinary course for each of those concentrations, extracurricular clubs, as well as community service opportunities, because we want them to be able to apply what they're learning in the classroom and their skills to these real world challenges beyond the classroom. It should be empowering for them to be able to do that and to take on these leadership positions in the community. All concentrations will include a culminating portfolio or project that showcases their work in their chosen concentration. This could be part of a senior capstone project, part of their CHUFSD, the seal of biliteracy, or the seal of civic readiness. And in fact, all students who elect to participate in the civics concentration will be required to meet the requirements of the seal of civic readiness. We are also promoting reflection. That's a big piece of this for students to meet as a cohort with each other and with faculty to talk about those connections that they're making in both their related experiences and their coursework. And finally, we're planning special events that we can bring in the community and guest speakers and take our students out on excursions to explore, and they can relate the content and the skills that they're learning. So that's the background. But where we are now with our progress is that we're very excited to be rolling out these 3 concentrations this fall. Freshmen were introduced to the concept at the beginning of the year, the beginning of this month at their class meeting. And then today and tomorrow, we're pushing into English classes to explore the different options to delve into those details in a smaller group, because it's hard when the entire freshman class is there. So we can answer those questions in a smaller setting, and we can gauge interest through a Google form to see where are they at this point in their thinking, and do they need to learn more, and who is on board, definitely, and who we can kind of shoulder tap as we're continuing to move forward of those kids who are on the fence and need some more information. All 9th grade parents were invited to attend an informational meeting before back to school night, which is on September 25th, for those interested students, so that way they can learn more as a family. We have 3 special events that are already lined up for the fall for those interested students. The first one is actually next week for our humanities group. Jonathan Krupp, who's the master storyteller here in Westchester, he's going to be performing stories from world history and conducting workshops on how students can mine, write, and perform their own stories. We're also teaming up with the STEM Alliance, which is a nonprofit out of Larchmont. They are bringing 2 workshops in October, one with a chemistry focus and one with an engineering focus. We're also going to be partnering with the Westchester Youth Alliance. They're in Chappaqua. They're going to be doing a workshop to our civics students around the idea of voice, community, and the collective we. So this is just a sampling of events that we have planned at the beginning, and we'll incorporate different ones as we learn about our different resources that are available. For example, Jackie Zemansky, an English teacher here at the high school, recently contacted Croton historian Mark Cheshire, who's actually going to be coming in as a guest speaker in her storytelling class. So that's one of the examples of the resources that we have available to us that we can tap into for these different concentrations that we have. We are having our annual community service and club fair on October 8th, because as I had said earlier, that's an expectation for students to participate in the clubs and the community service in those areas of interest. So we'll be able to point out to our students different groups and clubs that may be of interest to them in their given concentration. We even have a few village organizations that are attending our community service fair this year because they're looking for student representatives, which is a perfect opportunity for our civics-minded students. And they are going to officially be applying for their concentration cohort in November. So these students are certainly trailblazers, and they are thoughtful risk takers, which is in line with our vision. And so we look forward to updating you as they progress in this journey.
Question, could you repeat the three concentrations that are being offered this year?
Sure, it's humanities, STEM, and civics.
Thank you.
Okay.
You have a question? Oh, yeah.
No,
No, I want Mark to go first and then.
yeah, on that theme, is there any I don't think you are there any other concentrations that the district may be considering, or does that really doesn't encompass everything, doesn't it?
Well, we have talked about eventually adding more and maybe narrowing down some of those larger concentrations, because right now humanities consists of world language, also arts and music. So is there an opportunity to go even smaller? That's something we need to do, but we figured we'd start with these three broad areas and see where it goes.
Thank you.
So the next slide is related to the master schedule and calendar portion of our goals. You heard from us in some detail last month about the work we've been doing related to making changes to our master schedule. So that work is being done with the idea that with all the course changes that we're emphasizing, we can best support that innovation by making changes to our master schedule. And that's sort of the goal of this part of the work. So updates from, since you heard from us last about this, is that our master scheduling committee has reconvened since school has started, and we've taken a look at the work that happened over the summer with the consultant. So now the committee has seen the draft schedule that we shared with you last time. And they've started to take a closer look and hash down on some of the detail of that. That draft schedule, just to refresh, is structured around a 5-day week, maintaining some of our single period days and double period days within a 5-day cycle. Also incorporating some of the things that the committee had identified were priorities, incorporating some time for clubs and extracurriculars within the school day, as well as a block of time for interdisciplinary courses to meet. So we actually have 3 different blocks within that schedule and is slated for those interdisciplinary courses. So best fitting that mold. And then also a day that will come in a rotating pattern that contains a significant block of time in the afternoon for enrichment activities. So passion projects, special speakers related to disciplinary courses, or the concentrations, many different possibilities we've identified to use that time. So the committee has now started to get into the details of this, and we're thinking about things such as what are the different impacts to students that go to tech, for example. Some of the details, like how are we going to schedule phys ed within a different length of a cycle, so that we meet the requirement for phys ed and also help students to build the best schedules. So all those details are the things that we have to work out now, so that in a couple of short months, students can have, we have the framework for students to start building their own schedules. So, and I guess the last thing I can add is, the scheduling committee is going to be presenting that draft to the main faculty in our next faculty. And I think that's it for the master schedule portion.
Do you have a question now?
A more topic of discussion, it goes to what Erica. had presented.
Are you okay with us?
Yeah.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Because when I heard this just now, and I started thinking about it, I have a couple of concerns and I'm wondering how this will be addressed. One concern is that there may be students who have more varied interests than are in, or within a particular concentration. A student who is a strong humanities student and also very interested in the civics concentration. How will you, question one, how will you accommodate, or you are anticipating accommodating those students so that they are not in essence told or asked to decide at the beginning of ninth grade, okay, where do you want to come out at this point in time?
Well, I think that with the concentrations, they're very broad. To start with, as we just talked about, but that the idea of think of a college major, right?
Mhm.
When you have a college major, you're taking all of your core classes. So it's not as though if you go in as a math major, you're never taking a literature class or a
Sure.
philosophy class. So in that way, we're hitting on all of those areas for all students. The example that you brought about civics is interesting because it's interwoven in all of the subject areas. So if you look at the courses, bioethics is something that could count for civics, but personal finance, also New York State recognizes that as something as part of civic engagement too. So you can, in civics, not necessarily have to be in a particular area. So you could be that STEM person or that humanities person and still be involved in these other civics courses because there's room for it in your schedule. It's not like your schedule is just going to be jam-packed with math and science if you're a STEM person, for example. So there is opportunity to put all of your other interests in other areas in your schedule. The other thing that's interesting about civics is our teachers were talking about how if you're taking a social studies class, for example, there's often choice. You've got this classwork assignment, you can show your learning or look through these 3 lenses, you pick one. So if you're in the civics concentration, you really should be doing choice A. But if you as a humanities person, you still have the option to look through that civics lens, even if you're not pursuing a civics concentration. There's also no reason why you couldn't do the seal of civic readiness as somebody who's in the humanities concentration. It's not, that is the culminating project for that particular concentration, but you can certainly pursue that as one component separate of the concentration.
So a couple of observations. First is, you mentioned think of a college, right? You major, but many students begin college as undecided.
Yeah.
What changed their major?
Not as many as before.
Yeah, maybe not as many as before, but I'm just thinking when, and this goes really both to what happens in high school and at the middle school. Because students will come to the high school with these opportunities and also the trepidation. So I'm thinking that what happens at PVC is really gonna have to get students ready to think about what's at the high school. Not only academically, in terms of what's in the courses, but also a mindset about where we're going. And I know that's something I'm sure that's been talked about and will be talked about in administrative council, but
I was gonna say, there's 2 points to address before, we get off, into
Yeah.
another area. Is one, this is optional, so it's not as though when you come in to freshman year, you have to choose one of them. So there are students who this is not something that's on their radar, they don't have a particular passion in one of these areas. You're not committed to choosing one, unlike a college which eventually expects you to pick a major. The other piece to it is right now, if a student is not interested, the last opportunity to join is in sophomore year. And the reason for that is one, they're going to be, oh, I wish I had done that, but it was so early in freshman year, I didn't know. But we don't want to push it beyond that because it should be a sustained effort and reflection and not something that you get to senior year and like, oh, wait a minute, look, I actually did check these boxes. I just have to take this one other class. But you missed the whole idea of working with the cohort and making those connections. So they do have sophomore year to make that decision. And again, they can choose to not do any of them and not focus on one particular area.
In which case there would be a high school diploma,
Yes.
no seal or badge or certificate indicating a concentration, and for better or for worse, the student would leave our school to go on to either college or work, without that,
Just like now.
just like now.
Well, they would still be eligible for like the seal of biliteracy.
Oh,
yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
absolutely. Definitely.
So really what I guess what I'm hearing is that, I'm sorry, but one other thing I was thinking about is particularly as Mark said, master scheduling and kids who are in tech or on BOCES, thinking about how they're only gonna be here for half the school day. And
So that's actually on the
and
list.
how that gets so that they can have the humanities or perhaps the STEM.
That's an option. So when we're looking at electives for each of those concentrations, areas that they're taking in tech that fall under those umbrellas would count towards this in their elective portion of their concentration. So we want to encourage that as well as virtual high school. If there's a student who is really interested in philosophy as part of humanities, we have the opportunity to offer that to them through VHS as well.
Thank you.
So we could change to grading and assessment next.
I'm sorry, I didn't realize we had
Sorry. Get rid of that,
interrupted you, but okay.
So this is a shorter one, but our goals in this area include supporting the development of a study group to continue the work that we did previously with the Grading for Equity study group through CHUFSD. We're exploring options such as year-long grading versus discrete marking periods. Delving into mastery-based grading and portfolio-based assessment as possibilities. Our actions this year around grading and assessment are really to support teachers who are ready and willing to implement pilot programs for non-traditional research-based grading and assessment systems, because we know that we need to be able to match our grading and assessment philosophy with our instructional and pedagogical philosophy. So we're really getting there in our pedagogical and instructional philosophy, developing these new courses, deciding how we want our students to experience school, and we need to, in a lot of ways, catch up with our grading and assessment philosophy. So as part of that work, we are identifying and setting up visits and conversations with other schools that are implementing innovative grading systems and including assessments. And even ways of reporting things like transcripts. And we actually have our first visit coming up in October that we're excited about. And then we're working with teacher teams to identify assignments and projects in various classes that can align to the concentrations, so that even not just at the course level are we working toward concentrations, but also looking at what assignments, what research papers, what projects within each individual courses can help students tell their story. So we're sort of in a year of action research in pockets at CHS related to grading and assessment.
I have a question, just for the benefit of our community. Can you please talk to us about where the traditional grading, what the traditional grading model is? And then describe the portfolio-based grading model. And then talk about how both of those look. on a transcript to colleges.
Okay, so it's traditional grading is, think of it like a average of a survey of different aspects. So it can include things like class participation, classwork, assessment scores, projects, papers. So it's sort of an average.
Quizzes and tests.
Yeah, quizzes, right, all the things that go into the pot. You have your denominator, total points, everything is included in the pot. And then for us, we do marking periods, so you get truncated at certain points of the year and it becomes an average of those 4 truncated points throughout the year. So that's sort of your traditional grading that most of us are probably used to.
So the final grade is the average of whatever the 4 marking periods are.
And whatever inputs the teachers put into that.
And that's a numerical grade that's then translated to a letter grade.
So it's actually, we do all letter grades here. Some teachers will give quizzes and tests with number grades, but they all go in as letter grades into our system, but functionally, yeah, it's the same thing. Then when you're looking at something like mastery-based assessment, which is sometimes called standards-based assessment, they're slightly different. Something like mastery-based assessment, I'm probably going to explain this mathematical term in an English teacher's terminology, but mastery-based assessment is kind of like a decaying average. So basically, when you're doing mastery-based assessment, your goal is to attain proficiency by the end of the year. So in traditional assessment, whenever you take that test, if it's on October 20th, that's your grade, and that's the end of it, right? In mastery-based assessment, you're not expected to be proficient in a skill in October. There are multiple chances to practice throughout the year, and your goal as a student is to demonstrate proficiency by the end of the year. So over time, as your proficiency increases, the weight of those early assignments decreases. So while they still count, it's very slightly, and what matters more is how you perform on each individual standard in terms of proficiency by the end of the year. So it doesn't mean that nothing counts until the end of the year. It's just weighted much more heavily to the point at which you demonstrate proficiency. So when I hit proficiency, if I'm at, let's call it a level 3, that's my end score in that particular standard in June. If I get to another standard and my end score is a 4, because that's one that I'm a little stronger at, I've practiced multiple times throughout the year, have multiple assessments, I get a little bit more on that standard. And then you put all of those individual standards together.
And that's like a rubric that's set out at the beginning of the year.
Correct, it's a holistic standards-based rubric. And actually, some of our teachers who are piloting mastery-based grading have actually identified a really great software program that actually sort of like a mini version of Infinite Campus, but not a student information system that actually can calculate decaying average and present standards-based grading for rubrics. So we're excited about that.
And that's the same as the portfolios?
No, so portfolio-based grading, well, I shouldn't say, it's not portfolio-based grading, it's portfolio-based assessment. So portfolio-based assessment is when you put together an amalgamation of work, of your best work that corresponds to various skills or standards for a particular course. So I might have 5 different assignments in my English class that speak to character analysis, but I'm reflecting on and picking my best piece of work to contribute to a total portfolio. So I might put in a piece, I might have 25 standards that I need all of my students to be proficient in at the end of the year, and then my students would be putting together their portfolio based on their best work that would go toward a grade. As we're experimenting with all of these, we're still fitting into our traditional grading model because we still have our marking periods, we still have our transcript as is. So we're kind of converting these innovative grading systems into our existing model.
And how is that interpreted on a high school transcript by colleges?
So right now our transcripts look like they always have.
So it doesn't, like you're not conveying to a college what type of system of assessment was used?
Not yet. The place where we convey nuanced information is in our college profile. So every summer we create a new college profile, based on that year's class and what opportunities that class has. So right now, for example, we're working on college profile models that have our interdisciplinary classes front and center. And as our college reps come in, actually, we just had one today that was here, we are showing those college reps our mock-ups of our college profile so that we can get their feedback from a variety of institutions about what questions they have. Is this clear? Is this in line with what other schools are looking at? So that's sort of where you put that nuanced information about assessment methodology, interdisciplinary courses, things like that. And then if we get to the point where we're changing, say, district-wide or school-wide, the whole grading system, then that's a different conversation about what the transcript looks like. But we're not there yet, because we have to figure out exactly what our philosophy. Transcript is just a reporting of what's been done, right? It doesn't change the philosophy of the grading and assessment, just how we report it out, right? Or translate it out.
In the assessment of the portfolio, so it occurs throughout the course of the year, so there are 25, items that you have to demonstrate proficiency in. That demonstration has to occur throughout the course of the year. Right? Does that favor the self-motivated student at the expense of those that, take the path of least resistance and it's not due for another week, you know what I mean?
It's an interesting question, right? Like, what kinds of grading systems appeal to or benefit certain?
Yeah, not just from the grading aspect, I'm interested in how do we support students that may not respond favorably to that structure? And what structures can we build in the school to support them, that process?
It's one that comes to mind, so our bioethics class right now, so they're using a portfolio-based assessment for the latter part of the year. And as part of the support for getting to that point, they also have a conferencing system set up, and that actually is part of their assessment methodology to support the kids as they build their portfolio. So that's one example that comes to mind, but portfolio-based assessment isn't intended to be in June, you start putting together, go back in time and start putting together. It's actually an active process that goes throughout the year, which in theory would help to.
Should help, yes.
It should help,
yes.
because, it's not like you're waiting till the end of the year and then it's, oh, where did all my work go?
Yeah.
The sort of reflection process throughout.
Yeah, I'd love it as you guys think through this implementation. And pilot it to see how students respond, and I'm really curious about how it's perceived by them, whether it's helps them navigate the education requirements in high school.
Yeah, it's a really interesting learning journey. And when we go on our first visit, for example, we're going to be talking to students who are in a school program where they have a non-traditional transcript, a narrative transcript without letter grades, and are graded that way all throughout. So to hear from and they go to, highly competitive colleges, right? So to hear from them what their perspective is really interesting.
Yeah, I'd love to hear more about it.
I would too.
Just tracking, where is that visit coming from?
That one, we're going to the Scarsdale High School Alternative School.
Because I recall at the West Point dinner a couple of years ago, at Philly Foster, there was a New York City based high school that had a very heterogeneous high school in terms of racial and economic makeup, who had a very innovative, similar to what we're talking about here, approach to project-based learning, et cetera. Sarah, you,
Yeah, I don't remember the name of the school.
no,
off the top of my
but it
head,
might be
yeah.
something that, even though they have a different, came out of a different topic, they've been doing it for a number of years, it might be.
Yeah, it was one of
Interesting.
the pilot schools that was doing the project-based learning and assessments.
Yeah.
That then was informing some of the blue ribbon.
And I'm sure we can go, ask Westport and make that connection.
That all sounds super exciting. And I know parent of two high schoolers right now that they're learning their interdisciplinary courses and are very excited about everything that's happening there. So thank you so much.
And Laura, thank you for the explanation of the assessments. That was fantastic. Great.
That was scary time.
That was great.
No, it's good, it was
very
good, very clear.
I don't think that like many parents in the district really understand the nuance of all of that. So, I think that they could benefit from it because to hear it from students' perspectives, they're very excited by it. And it's like trying to carry like a tone of fairness to them that is interesting to hear them talk about. You know, it seems more fair to them to know to be assessed on the mastery at the end of the district or the end of the year. If somebody didn't grow up in that model, I think it's unfair that they will now be graded more fairly, but whatever.
No, but I think.
I won't hinder their progress.
I think I raised a very good point. There are a lot, you know, we talk about assessment, grading and assessment. Many folk, probably every parent, who did not go through that kind of an assessment process or can't recollect that, you know, are gonna be very scared about what this means.
1000%.
And I think what is probably most important for the success is, well, in addition to having students be excited and engaged, because they will speak to their parents, but really kind of how, I don't know what it's called, market, sell, communicate,
Inform.
explain, inform, whatever those words are, so that people really have a sense of it, I mean, parents and other community members, and how it can be even demonstrated more than just, you know, we're gonna have a meeting of parents and explain it to you, because that's not gonna necessarily assuage their concerns.
Josh?
To that point, I did a quick search on our website and I had a really hard time finding this information that you just talked about, Laura. And it does exist. The concentrations, I found them buried deep in the course catalog. And no place else on our website.
But it's been coming home with students.
I understand that it's been coming home with the students, but this is the sort of thing that I can imagine that a parent might want to have to hand.
Sure.
Both the concentrations, the explanation of these grading method, of these assessment methodologies. These are all things I think might make sense to fairly quickly put some pages together so that people can find them and make it more easily discoverable.
The team's actually working on a communication around concentrations in some detail now, right? So that's forthcoming quickly.
And ninth grade parents have gotten.
Right, but I think the question Josh is asking is how do these things become available beyond ninth grade parents? Because one of the things, and we know we've talked about this, like in discussing like transitions from CET to PVC and PVC to the high school, people are thinking about these things years before their kids get there. And so to sort of know what to expect, it just eases the process for everybody, because it's not like you're getting hit with everything that you're getting hit with when you come into a new building. Just to sort of like know what to anticipate and know what to sort of talk to your kids about. I think that's what people in the community are looking for. So I think it's a great suggestion, Josh.
Yeah.
To think about ways to make it visible, because again, it's a great story to tell. Why not tell the story in a way that people can read it, hear it?
And then that goes back to PVC, who's saying, okay, how are our kids gonna be prepared for what they're gonna have in ninth grade? And I'm sure you, as I said before, you all thinking about that, and that will come into, you know, courses, guidance, and everything else at the middle school level.
Why don't we go there now?
You like to segue?
We can go to work. So what we want to speak to you about this evening, and be as brief as possible, but as descriptive as possible, is basically what will students experience at PVC Middle School? What are some of the changes that are occurring currently over the next 3 years? How do we ensure through our schedule that there's time for those things, appropriate time? And finally, how do we provide students feedback? and parents progress reporting in a meaningful way that encourages the outcomes that we want to see in our students and throughout our system. So the first thing I want to talk about under class design is three things. Two of them are grouped together because they mean the classes. I'd like to start with the inquiry-based science. As you know, this will be the last year that living environment is offered in the 8th grade. Living environment is a Regents course-based course that prepares kids to take their first Regents. So in supplanting that, we have a vision to offer a much more diverse science offering between 5th and 8th grade. And basically what that translates to is right now in the 7th and 8th grade, most of the science is focused on life science in helping kids being prepared for living environment Regents. In changing this, one of the things that it offers us an incredible opportunity to diversify the science offerings. So in 5th and 6th and 7th and 8th grade, being able to offer units of science that don't focus so much on just content acquisition, but on skill acquisition in the realm of science. So imagine a course or imagine a grade that offers, instead of just we're doing life science, we have physics in there, we have STEM-based subjects. We also have earth science as well as maybe astronomy and so forth and so on. The other thing that we really are intrigued with as it applies to this and the work that we've done in this area is aligning our grades 5 through 8 in a way that offers students greater choices. So imagine once the science teachers come to a final decision on what units they will offer in each of the grade levels, also having some time at the end of the year or at some point in the year to have kids engage in project-based learning that involves an area of their choice in science that then can branch out and be more transdisciplinary. That being said, obviously that work, that conversation has already started last year. And again, we're going to be ready to launch that in the fall of next year. Along those same lines, we will be launching Algebra for All next year. Currently, the majority of our 8th grade class is enrolled in algebra. Through the work that we've started already, we're going to be doing some backward planning from the 8th grade curriculum, helping the 7th, 6th, and 5th grade understand what are those cross-cutting concepts, what are those spiraling areas of the curriculum that can help prepare every student to take advantage of algebra in the 8th grade. So no more will we have a bifurcated 8th grade experience where one group has this math and one group has that math and the stigmas that come with that. Now, some people asked when we, discussed this with parents at the hidden transitions meeting, well, how do I know my child will be ready for that? Well, I think it's really important that we offer children supports throughout their experiences up into, the leaving of middle school. But what we look at here is bookend supports of summer offerings, and that's changing some of our summer camps or academic camps, so we can recommend to kids that they can take a pre-algebra course over the summer and help them. And also being ready with a safety net for our students in case they don't do as well as they want to do or as we want them to, and have something over the following summer to prepare them again to take that algebra Regents and conquer that and overcome that. So that's those two classes. That work is already underway and we have everything calendared out as we're meeting with the teachers and giving them professional development work days to redesign this around goals that are very concrete. And again, always keeping in mind the opportunities that present themselves here, which is that once you have the foundational pieces of a curriculum, how do we tweak that over the years to have more student choice, more interdisciplinary experiences built into that? And that's what's really exciting for our teachers. The other thing I wanted to speak about this evening is our interdisciplinary coursework. Obviously, we have a long history of delving into this area. Our classes in the 5th and 6th grade are humanities and math science. Obviously, in a school, you're never done pursuing excellence and trying to make things less siloed and fragmented. We are rolling out a pilot of a humanities course this year with 2 teachers, and looking forward into next year, our 8th grade courses, 7th and 8th grade courses, we will have interdisciplinary courses on each of those levels in the area of humanities. And last but not least, our passion-based electives. This is work that has turned out to be extremely exciting and has generated a lot of enthusiasm from our teachers. So we've begun this work by planning with our faculty. Just imagine what course would you want to teach, you could be teaching, and I included in my board report a list of the first rendering of courses that came back. At the last meeting we had with faculty, our entire faculty, we had them in groups where we said, here's some likenesses of what you suggested. What coursework could you create out of this? Telling them about tentative scheduling of how that would be rolled out. A lot of different ideas to sift through. But basically, with just 3 weeks of school down, we've already, I think, achieved a great hurdle. One, our faculty understands clearly that this is the direction we are certainly going in. That next year we will have intersession elective classes that will offer our students a wide variety of classes that go beyond the middle school curriculum, while maintaining the foundational elements of the middle school experience to ensure that all of our kids have the basic skills they need in reading, math, and thinking. It also allows students to continue to pursue their passions and make choices, as well as energizing our teachers by helping them realize the connectiveness between them and their colleagues. So with that being said, there's no question, we can move on to the next slide.
Are there any questions?
We have a question.
I've got it. Yes, sir.
I applaud the district for pursuing getting every kid to algebra by the 8th grade. I think that's it is a significant endeavor. My question is, what about the kids, and you know this is a topic for me from the long distance past, is what about those kids who are ready before 8th grade?
Yeah, well, we've always had a plan for them, right? So even now, when we have kids in 6th grade who are doing 7th grade work, we move them into a 7th grade lab. So we're always gonna have opportunities like that. Also, I think the more important point is, how do teachers differentiate on the grade level so that kids can stay with their social group, aren't pushed into a higher class or rushed along? And I think what's really important there is that if you're looking through the lens of more than just acquisition of math content, then you're gonna be providing learning experiences that do more than that. So for instance, that connect math with science. All right, so for instance, right now, there's a group of students who are showing greater propensity to do mathematics. And so the teacher designed a project, a finance project for them, if that's what they told her they wanted to do. And that's what they're doing. And so it takes the skills that they learn, applied to a multidisciplinary approach. And we think that's appropriate. Now, every now and then, Josh, there are outliers. And when there's outliers that are so, know everything, can do everything, can show us that they have complete mastery of all those skills, have passed all the benchmarks, then we'll have to decide on what to do with those students. In the past, we've given them geometry also, right? So that's what always be on.
That was really what my question is, because I know we've done that in the past.
Right, but I want you to also understand, it's kind of a rarity that we have someone. And so right now, let's just say in our 6th grade classroom, to use an example, they give a pre-test so they can ascertain where the students are in that unit. So if a kid gets a 99 in the pre-test, the teacher knows they need more than just be teaching to the middle type of approach.
Yeah.
And our teachers have been really good over the years about responding to that and also collaborating with other teachers on the upper grade levels to provide them with the learning experience that's appropriate and that is doable.
Thank you.
No problem. I appreciate the question. All right, on to master schedule.
So in order to support the class design we're talking about, we obviously have to make sure we are revisiting our schedule on a cyclical basis to make sure that we're meeting the needs of all of our students, all of our course needs, and of course, all the wonderful things that make a middle school. And so in order to ensure student success for interdisciplinary courses and varied learning experiences, I know we've talked about it already, but we have aligned some learning blocks to support those interdisciplinary courses across all 4th grade levels. To also make some minor adjustments to increase the availability of AIS and enrichment offerings as needed. And realigning those start times for particularly our 5th graders to ensure kind of smoother transition to the way that they start their day. And we're super excited to have our first zero period on Monday, where students will have a larger chunk of time to work within their advisory group to pursue their passions. And so those advisory groups are switched up a little bit this year as well in order to increase student interaction across those grade levels. Our 5th and 6th graders are meshed together and our 7th and 8th graders are meshed together. And also in an attempt to then enhance student relationships with a variety of adults throughout the building, they're not just connected to grade level teachers or team teachers. So we're hoping that they get to meet more people, more familiar faces, more trusted adults. And those groups are smaller than they've been in the past too. It's the average is probably 8 or 9, but no more than 10. And so every faculty member is available during that zero period. Everyone in PDC is doing, something to do with their passion pursuits or their advisories during that time. And so we're super excited to see what that all looks like on Monday.
So one other thing that I want to add in the tweaking and the reconsideration of the master schedule is that not only are we able to offer quality experiences for students to allow them to pursue their passion, but we've been able to increase the offering of support services throughout the school day. So the work on the master schedule has been really important in that, because to Neil's question before that, he kept pointing at the middle school constantly, was how are we preparing kids? We can't forget, while we want our kids to have these wonderful experiences and for them to probe the world, we can't forget about the foundational skills that we need them to have. And those are in reading and math skills and computation skills, as well as thinking skills. So making sure that we're not leaving any child, not forgetting any child needs. Okay? That is what we're doing. And you know what? We finally have an AIS team that we're really stoked about. And, looking at student data and so forth and so on. And I think I also included that in one of my board reports. And you're gonna have an analysis over the weekend about the advisory period. So if you didn't remember what Nicole said, which sometimes I don't.
I'll take them.
Please. It'll be in the board report and I'll warn you, it's a little bit more than 2 pages, okay?
Shock.
So last but not least, obviously with these changes and with the historical focus of the middle school on project-based learning and getting kids, to take ownership of their learning, we come to this subject of grading and assessment. As you know, we redid and reconsidered our report cards last year. And it's not the end all be all when you make changes on your report card, but already we're seeing significant thought changes in our teachers about how they assess students because of the change in behaviors that promote learning and well-being. We also have a really good apparatus of assessments that are going to provide kids with the same opportunities as they'll have at the high school to reflect, to present their best work, to redo work in the pursuit of mastery. But I think we still have work to do. We want to, over the next 2 years, inventory our assessments to ensure that we know exactly what every assessment was designed to do instead of just saying, well, that's the assessment that I give. The point of all this is for students to take ownership over their learning. And the only way we feel they can do that is by providing them with actionable feedback in a way that inspires them, engages them in goal setting, and also bridges the gap between what's happening at school and what the parents understand. So these are things that we'll continue to talk about in our coffees. And again, the behaviors that promote learning and wellness address the vision map, because we're not saying these skills are just important for you to be successful in the workplace. We're saying these skills are successful in all aspects of life. So they have become a first day topic. This is how we operate in this classroom, because these are the 3 skill sets that you need to consistently demonstrate. And I think over the years, we're going to see that permeate more and more into the school culture. And that's what we have for us today. Thank you so much.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I didn't say the words, Greg. Sorry.
CET, okay, Greg?
Thank you very
He told
much.
me he wanted me to take him to his car and something about piggyback.
So we're not gonna piggyback here. We're just gonna say what we need to say. So as you all know, we are currently in year 3 of some very major changes that took place at CET before we were even on the trajectory of the vision map. So in year 3 of ITAD and in year 3 of the house system, we are looking at ways of advancing that work to align it with the vision map. So in our 3-year vision, we're looking to create flexible and multi-age class configurations and learning experiences and build on the interdisciplinary curriculum that, and we've talked about this already, that elementary school lends itself to interdisciplinary. When you have one classroom teacher who's doing all the subject areas, very easy to make connections and to do stuff thematically and bridge those gaps so that it's not taught in silos. But we're looking for ways to do that in a very innovative way. So through ITAD in this current 3.0 model, our actions this year are to have our special area teachers pushing into all K-4 classrooms. So they've been given designated time at the beginning of each day to plan and collaborate with gen ed teachers. So for example, if Miss Leslie would like to collaborate with Miss Baker, our 1st grade teacher, we can provide coverage for Miss Baker so that they can plan together and then they can do an interdisciplinary unit together. So all of our special area teachers, not just through isolated classes like it was in our 1.0 version, are now going into all of our gen ed classes and collaborating. We see things like maple sugaring being something that Rennie McManus can do with a grade level or a class. We see trips down to the Hudson River or to Silver Lake right off of our campus so that these children are exposed to unique opportunities, creating, like I said, not just the 2 special area teachers working together, but the special area teachers working with the gen ed teacher. And one of our big pushes this year, and since we talked about this the first time, I can give an update. We're expanding what we're calling now multi-aid teaming opportunities. So we talked about this at our opening day faculty meeting, and we told our teachers that, you know, we know that there have been pockets of older grades working with younger grades and doing either reading together or STEM activities. But what we did was we told everybody that the expectation was that every single classroom team up with a classroom on a different grade level and have experiences together. So as of beginning of the week, Monday, we had a Google survey that went out that each teacher talked about who they were pairing up with in the building, what they were looking to pursue and do at that time, and ways that we as an administrative team could support what they're doing. So I am very proud to say that we have all 30 of our classroom teachers teamed up with another classroom teacher on a different grade level, and they will do things such as STEAM activities, STEM activities, activities around whether it's Black History Month, Women's History Month, having just various opportunities to take walking field trips together. And so
there are opportunities outside of the house system now for kids in different grades to be working with each other on shared experiences. So we're very excited about that.
If I could just add that it's not only classroom teachers, but it's every special education teacher and every support staff within the school. So it's a collaboration time where everybody's coming together to kind of put their expertise together to give the best experience for our students, which is very exciting.
Within our house system this year, we are looking to put more of a academic or curriculum spin on that. So if we are creating a program of one school, one book. So each month of the year, when we have a house day, no matter what house you're in, you're going to be exposed to the same piece of literature. So if it's a book based on respect, all the houses will read that book and do activities around it. If it's a book on empathy, all the houses will read that book. And so what that lends itself to is now the kids go back to the classroom. Now they've been in different houses and they've had a different experience with the same book there. The teacher can do follow-up activities or extension activities based on that book that every child has been exposed to. So our plan is to do that, a different book or a different theme each month, but that every child and teacher and faculty member will be exposed to that and will be able to do different activities with that. So that's something that's very exciting for us. We are also, again, the same line of class design and multi-age and meeting kids' individual needs is with our new AIS configuration, we can do more skills-based configurations for AIS. So it's not just, oh, I'm meeting with a first grade group, but if there's a kindergartner or a second grader that meets the criteria for what those children need, instead of calling it first grade AIS, it'll be a skills-based AIS. So it will not make any child feel like, oh, I'm going with younger kids or I'm not with my regular cohort. When you can name the skill, then those children can go and get precisely what they need during that intervention time. And we're also bringing together this year stakeholders that are interested in some innovative classroom designs for next year. Something like that could be a 3-4 class that's taught together, 2 teachers, but a 3-4 combination. Could be a 1-2 combination. People who are looking on the same grade level, perhaps in 4th grade, if you have someone whose passion is science and someone else's passion is social studies, they can switch their classes so that one teacher is teaching the science to both classes or another teacher is teaching the social studies to both classes. So we already know that there are teachers out there that are interested in these things, bringing them together so that we can plan class design for the 25-26 school year. So those are our 3-year vision and our action steps for this year.
Just thinking about that, as far as the AIS being skill-based, that's something that we've been doing the last few years during our summer, when we offer our summer academies for ELA and for math. We've done skill-based, we'll have students across 2 or 3 grade levels coming together, multi-age, where students can focus on an individual skill with the teacher and even switching our teachers and our groupings and having that flexibility throughout the day or the week or the 2 or 3 or 4 weeks of our summer academies, and it's been very successful. So we're looking forward to kind of that transition to doing it inside the school day. But as we talk about all of this, and as we move into master schedule and calendar, I took a little note here, and I really see it as a 5-pronged approach, being passion-based, multi-age opportunities, having student engagement, building connections, and also having that kind of cross curriculum where you can bring different, not only curriculums, but different instructors to be educating our students. So as we look at what's new this year, Carrie, of course, talked about what we've done with our iPad, but what we're really excited about is what's going to be called our Tiger Day. So starting in February, we're looking to take our 6-day schedule and expand it into a 7-day schedule. And what we like so much about that is not only is that going to give our students an opportunity, but it's also going to give our faculty an opportunity. When we look at scheduling and all these changes we're making, one of the key components is giving our staff the opportunity to come together to collaborate, because it sounds great. Hey guys, go ahead, go team teach, come together. Let's do this project. Let's do this theme. Let's do that unit. But we need to find, in our charges, to find time within the school day to give our faculty that time to come together, to collaborate, to plan, to exchange ideas. So we've been able to find some time on Monday and Friday afternoons for all of our staff, K-4, our specials teachers, all of our support staff, some of our teacher aides, to come together to give them that planning time where it is solely theirs every Monday and Friday afternoon. We found that going into week 3 of school to be extremely helpful. Another change that we've made is for our ITAD, we're now offering all of our specials teachers the opportunity first thing in the morning to go and meet with a classroom teacher, to go and meet with a special education teacher, and they can have that one-on-one or a small group of 2 or 3 instructors coming together so they can plan what that unit's going to look like. So all these changes sound great, but if we don't give our educators the opportunities in our schedule to come together to do that planning, to do that collaborating, then none of this is going to happen. So as now we've kind of put into, say, play when our teachers can come together, now we're looking at, okay, they're planning, they're collaborating, what's that going to mean to us? So on our 7th day, we're looking to bring all of our students together on every 7th day from 8:45 to 9:30 as a student connection experience paired with passion-based learning. So all of our students will come, whether it's our gymnasium, whether it's our multi-purpose room, perhaps it's outside, it's going to change every 7th day. We're going to bring them all together and allow them the opportunity not only to expand on their experiences they've had in their house system and to be able to present what they've been doing in their house system, but it's also going to be passion-based related. We're going to invite our staff to those assemblies, those gatherings, and our staff members can present something that's of interest to them or their passion. And we're also going to have our students perform for each other and for the staff so they can share in their passion-based interest. Once again, bringing everybody together, bringing that excitement and just having that snowball effect. The other thing we're really pleased to roll out is with that Tiger Day, on that day 7, all of our contractual prep time will be finished. Every teacher in our building will have all of their prep time done by 9:30 in the morning. So not only that day when we have that great school-wide assembly, bringing everybody together, fostering those connections, fostering those students learning together, multi-age K-4, but now we have the entire rest of the day for all of our classes, all of our support staff, every staff member in that school to have flexibility in that day, whether they want to go and use our walking permission slip, take a walk into town, visit a community business, visit the police station, visit the firehouse, invite our community members in where they can then speak to a couple of grade levels, talk to those multi-age teams. So it's really going to open up a lot of opportunities. So using our schedule to enhance what we already have and take it to another level is something we're very excited about. And grading the assessment.
If there's any questions, pausing for a minute. Okay. So grading and assessment, this one fits so beautifully as a district goal into where we are at CET right now, because I'm sure you're all aware that in recent years, there's been a lot of talk about changing literacy instruction and reading instruction to align it with the science of reading. So 2 years ago, that was an initiative brought to us by our teachers. They were like, we're reading about this. We know we need to make some changes in our instructional practices and our approach to teaching reading. We've provided them with a significant amount of professional development, a significant amount of resources. But now what we're finding is the instructional practices have changed, but we don't have assessments that are currently aligned with those instructional changes. So we are spending time this year examining various types of assessments, various types of what is out there that will not just, because right now we have a reading assessment. We don't necessarily have a literacy assessment. So we are talking about now wanting to assess things like phonemic awareness, phonics, word fluency, before you even get to things like comprehension and inferencing. And so we are thrilled that this is not just something that we're passionate about, but we have a whole group of teachers on various grade levels
that love talking about this and are doing research on their own. And so our goal for this year is to come up with an assessment that aligns beautifully with our instructional practices. Our long-term goal and vision is to create a reporting mechanism that clearly lets a parent and a student see their progress, understand their progress, and have a vested interest in their progress. We've learned over recent years now that we have our report cards in Infinite Campus, that not even all of our families are checking report cards. Like, they're not even going on to see how they, so if the parents aren't checking, then it having zero impact on our students. So we are really looking to create a reporting mechanism that is aligned with a growth mindset, and so that students can see where they need to be, what are their goals, and kind of reward and recognize approximations toward a goal. When I say goal, I mean the standard. So we've had a standards-based report card for as long as I can remember. And so we're not talking about changing the standards, but making those standards more accessible to children, for them to understand what does that mean, and for them to acknowledge steps toward that. So for example, if one of the standards in math is can multiply within 100, you know, so maybe an approximation that a child reaches a goal of, they can do it within 25. Then they can do 50, then they can do 75, and then they can master the standard. But they can see where they are, where their little increments of growth, and it lets a parent see where an end goal is and where a standard is. So we have, when we went to Washington DC a few years ago as an administrative team, there was a district out of Mineola that was doing something along those lines that we were very intrigued with them at the time. We've been in contact with that school district. I've met with the assistant superintendent for curriculum and instruction there, and we plan to send some teachers down to visit there and talk to teachers about this type of assessment. Because it's all great for me to say, oh no, they love it. They are loving it. Well, no, I want our teachers to go and ask those difficult questions and really understand from a teacher perspective how this type of assessment is helping inform their instruction, helping help their parents understand what's happening, and more importantly, having the kids have a vested interest in the steps that they're taking and what they're learning in school. So that's where we are right now, for as far as a 3-year vision and what we're doing this year.
I just have a comment regarding the assessment, as a former, obviously, CET parent, with respect to getting the students to buy in to those assessments, I would just, as part of the conversation, consider the delivery of those assessments. Because if you're requiring the only mechanism by which you can get a report card is Infinite Campus, then it's on the parent to then share it with the student. So I think that's a little bit of a challenge. And I've always kind of said that not everybody is like technologically I don't want to say advanced, but like fluent,
Savvy enough to get that.
savvy,
Yeah.
fluent enough. And it is a challenge for parents sometimes to reach these assessments, and in the face of a challenge, you know, they'd rather just call a teacher and say, how's my child doing? So while you're examining that, I would just.
Yeah, and I think that our goal is to have the students involved in every step along the way, so that whatever the reporting system at the end is the end, but they are not surprised by things. They're not seeing information that would be in there for the first time. And so having the students involved as well, I think is extremely important.
And Anna, one of the things we've talked about is, in addition to an IC or reporting device, also having a, paper that goes back and forth between the family, and the teacher, something that the teacher, of course, is familiar with, the student understands, and the family understands. And that becomes a talking point for the teacher, for the student, and especially I always found as a classroom teacher, report cards are important, but nothing replaces the conference.
Yeah.
Like, I think parents, families, teachers get a lot more out of that face-to-face conference. So moving to like a conferencing kind of platform where there's always a communication between, parent, a child, and a teacher, so they know where they are every step of the way. So there isn't any confusion, or if they need clarification, it's a conversation. It's not an email, it's not a phone call, it's face to face. So we really, I say, value the conference, and our thinking is when we're designing these new, say, assessment systems, how can we have something that is always back and forth a means to enhance that communication between school and home.
I think there's a big difference between an assessment and like a reporting.
Method.
So an assessment, most of our kids that take an assessment during the school day with their teacher go over it, they talk about it. It's like a one and done, so to speak. Whereas the culminating report card is the piece that I think we're lacking. And one of the structures that we are exploring right now is something called a badge book. And so again, it's a tangible book that a kid gets to put a sticker in when they've made progress, and then that would go home way more frequently than a report card would be available on Infinite Campus. So it would enhance that communication and paint a much more accurate picture of where a child is, how they're progressing, and where they should be.
And it's very visual for the student, and not only is there a paper copy, but there's also a digital copy that the teacher houses. So something we're gonna move forward with.
Yeah, and speaking to the fact that you said that, you know, you found in your research that parents maybe didn't check Infinite Campus, and I do think it's CET, especially because there is this spring conference, and it's kind of like is on the tail end of like, and how, you know, what are you thinking about for next year, and where is the student for next year? It does kind of replace that feedback that you get from the report card, because parents walk out of there with a definite idea of how their student is. That was ours.
Yes, Chad.
It's more of a general point across all the home schools concerning grading, assessment, and reporting, which is that as parents, we have a tendency to view school through the lens of what our own school experience was. And for many of us, that was like 25, 35 years ago. And as a result, we may not necessarily understand. And so this goes back to what I was saying before about communication. It's really important that we document it well, share it well with parents, so they understand why we're doing it differently. You know, what's the reason for doing it this way? And explaining it that it's different. And don't be surprised by the fact that it is different from what you experienced in 1974, which is 50 years ago now.
Still 25 for me.
Right. So,
I agree with you. I do think that as you know, as a board, we need to educate ourselves more regarding these systems to be able to support the district. But I know that we hear from a lot of parents that don't really understand the steps that this work started at, where we are, and certainly not where we're going. So I know that we've had conversations about messaging and all of that, and I know that, you know, you're all very effective at doing that when you're given it a forum by which to do it, so.
I think it's also that you know, it's how you initially deliver that message, but also how it's reiterated and continuously communicated throughout, right? Because it's, no one's ever gonna pick it up, just sort of like the first time you hear about it. It's like, as you continue to hear about it and hear how it's evolving, it generates better understanding as well.
I also like the collaborative approach, which is I mean, I heard a few mentions of this about working together, parents, students, and teachers together. So that, you know, this is a team. It's for the benefit of the student, but in order for that student to succeed, it's the faculty and the kids and the parents and the administration. And that collaborative approach, I think, is really powerful.
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in because I think you both know that I've been following the story of like some of these great innovations at CET over the last couple of years, like ITAD and buddy classes and things like that. And it is really exciting. I wanted to say thank you for sharing with us that through these couple of years of piloting, we've now achieved the point where these are going into all of our general ed and special ed classrooms, because I think that was always your goal all along. But just to see that it's gotten there in this period of time, I think is great. So congratulations on that. So it's just great to hear. And as the book person, one school, one book, awesome idea. I love it. Maybe one of the maybe one of the most exciting things that I've heard in a long time. It just sounds really fun. So thank you.
Let us know which books they are too.
We will watch it and share, so we're gonna
Share
create a document that has a link to the book so that it can be done. It can be read, it can be watched, and then there's a space for teachers to include extension activities that any grade level could use.
Yeah, I just think people get behind that, families get behind that, and clearly Sarah and I will be.
Exactly.
So, I mean, I agree with everything that has been said. I just, when we talk about learning walks and visits, CET, and to all the schools, but particularly this, I think it might be very exciting to be able to arrange during the year to go to one of the, morning, Tiger Days activities to
Tiger
see.
Day, you never know what you're gonna see.
Oh, actually, you're right, more than just.
Yeah, because it's the
45
morning thing and then it's the afternoon, the rest of the day has endless opportunities. And it's very exciting to sit in a faculty meeting like we did yesterday and hear teachers whispering to each other about what they can do on those days.
I can see that, and certainly not to slight the other schools in the district. I hope we will be able to go and see some of those innovative activities in practice.
Carrie, and I think your point too about like the excitement from teachers, like we heard the same from both PBC and the high school as well. So it's really exciting to see that. I think from our perspective as well, to see that level of engagement and excitement in really like exploring some of these innovative ideas.
And hearing more of we get to do this instead of we have to do this. And that's really cool.
That's fantastic.
Maybe time we'll talk about school and you start hearing the get to
Yeah.
phrase rather than the have to phrase, that's a win.
Right.
That is a big win.
From students and teachers.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But we also know when teachers are excited, students are excited, and at the end of the day, that's what it's all about.
Anyone else? Well, thank you all. Thank you.
I just want to say, this is a team that is not only visioning, but managing and leading a stunning amount of change and has in an amazingly short period of time. And is bravo. Tremendous
Thank
work.
you.
Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you all.
Now bring this to the closing of our meeting. The board will meet again on October 10th for our regular meeting. Please look out for notices for that. So item 5.1, adjournment. Be it resolved, the Board of Education hereby adjourns the meeting at 10:04 p.m.
So moved.
On the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you, everyone. Got it right.